Alright, what's going on, guys? So we just got patch 1.07 on Thursday for Elden Ring, and there was so much to unpack even in the patch notes alone. So many good changes that we've been asking for a long time, but arguably the best part about this update were things that nobody would have known about if they were just playing the game. And that is that this update inadvertently leaked the DLC for Elden Ring. Hidden in the files of patch 1.07 were so many hints at what the DLC is going to be that I'm honestly shocked they left this in, because for me this is almost too good to be true. But there's been a lot of misinformation going around and a lot of really major stuff that people aren't talking about. So today we're going to break down all of that, and I'm going to give you my thoughts about what I think the DLC is going to be based on this. But as always, before we get into that, I know about 80% of you guys that watch all of my videos are doing so without being subscribed. So if you don't mind, go ahead and press that button for me because it helps the channel out in more ways than you know. But with that, let's get into it. So we're going to talk about this a little bit out of order, but I do want to start with the background of how exactly this stuff was found. When the update was released, there were several new files added to the game with some very suspicious labels. Now, Sekiro Doobie was the one who was sending me all the stuff they were finding in the files, so definitely go give them a big thank you. But the label on the code that caught everybody's eye was the tagline DLC 01. And you can see an example of this tagline in the code here, and let's talk about what exactly this could mean. Now, obviously, DLC only means one thing. We all know what DLC is, I'm sure I don't need to explain that to you. But the way this is used in the code is likely a label for the package it's going to be shipped in its completed form. So we can assume that items with this label are items that are going to be coming in the first DLC. And I say first because it does have that 01 tagline. That really makes it sound like there's more than one planned. Now, I will say I was tipped off about the existence of DLC a little while ago, and this does confirm to me that they are at least working on it. But I do have to say I don't have any knowledge of more than one coming. But the fact that it does say 01, I think is plenty to get at least excited about the possibility of more than one DLC. So let's talk about what exactly had that label in it. Now, the first suspicious items in the files that were labeled with DLC 01 that kind of started this whole rabbit hole were actually a set of player hairstyles that currently don't exist in the game. Now, there were very rough models in the files, however Garden of Eyes actually rendered them in-game, and I'll show you them on screen now. The first is a sort of tied back braid. Looks pretty cool. The second is sort of swept back and wild. Now, Garden has it labeled as Godric. However, I checked them side by side and it really doesn't seem to be the same style. The third is a sort of twin tail style, but it's actually rendered in with Renala's crown. Now, I was told that this existed in the files before, however, I wasn't able to verify that. There's another one with twin braids that looks a lot like Queen Marika's hair, and then another braided slash ponytail style that kind of looks like the Shura hair from Sekiro. And the last one is kind of half braids, half long, that I think actually resembles the painting of Radagon in the Round Table Hold more so than Mikola. But for a deep dive on those hairstyles, check out Garden's video on them. But what's interesting about these hairstyles is that some people are hypothesizing that they could be rendered in as part of NPCs that are going to be in the DLC. And since they tend to resemble many of the main characters in the game, it could be a hint that we may be going back in the past for the DLC. However, I don't think I agree with that. What I think is much more likely are that these are just going to be further customization options for the player that we'll get whenever the DLC drops. And the reason I say that is because a lot of NPCs have their own unique hairstyles that are loaded in as part of their model. And so I don't think this would be a very unique case. I think these are just going to be more customization like they did with the skins in Sekiro. But either way, they are labeled as DLC, and I already know I'm making a Shura Sekiro character when that comes out. But I gotta be honest, the next part of this leak has me by far the most excited. There was another part in the files that was labeled with DLC 01. And that was a complete folder of the assets of the Colosseums that we can find around the map. As you guys know, we talk about them all the time. There's 3 Colosseums in the map of Elden Ring. One in Caelid, one in Leyndell, and one in Limgrave. And we've always speculated that these were supposed to open, because when you visit the Colosseum in Limgrave, there's a ghost that's weeping that says, "All I wanted to do was fight to the last as a warrior. So why, O guidance of grace, will these doors not open?" And so we're under the belief that these were supposed to be the PvP arenas for Elden Ring. Now, all of the Dark Souls games had PvP arenas, so we were all expecting Elden Ring to have one as well. And it looks like that wish is coming true because in those files are the Colosseums. Now, it's not known if all of the complete assets are there and the strings of text to get them to properly work. However, it's undeniable what they are and what their intention is. because as you can see in the code it says Arena and DLC 01. Now it's also important to note that both Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3's PvP arenas arrived with the first DLC, so it makes sense that Elden Ring would follow suit in that regard. But another cool thing is that we know these aren't just leftover files, because they're updated on the inside versus what we currently have in the game. So this communicates a few things. FromSoftware is actively working on updating these. They are labeled as arenas rather than just coliseums, and they're set to arrive with the first DLC. And that has me so excited. Now a few things I'm curious about is if we can find a ranking system associated with these in those files, or any data suggesting certain multiplayer modes that we're going to have available in those. Because if you guys remember, the arena in Dark Souls 3 had different kinds of team battles, and free-for-all and objective modes and stuff. And with Elden Ring there's so much more room for creativity, so I'm really hyped to see what they do with these. But it doesn't even end there. Also found within the files of patch 1.07 were the code of new maps, one of which is an entirely new legacy dungeon. Now when I saw these originally, I theorized that these may have been the maps for the coliseums. However, that's not actually the case. These maps are all brand new and don't currently exist in the game. The maps for the coliseums were discovered, but they weren't the ones that were referenced before. So it's almost undeniable that these two new maps are for the DLC, one for the new legacy dungeon, and then I think one for the new biome that legacy dungeon is going to be in. So let's break all this down for a minute. The hairstyles and the coliseums are confirmed for DLC 1, and then if we assume that these new maps are going to be part of that DLC as well, then we have a new legacy dungeon and a new area. So it sounds to me like DLC 1 is going to be at least the size of Ashes of Leyndell, but when it comes to the scope of Elden Ring, I imagine it may be even bigger, because I can't imagine they do a full-scale paid DLC, and also not throw in things like new dungeons, new side quests, new weapons and armor. But obviously we don't have the files for the full DLC yet. These are just the things that are left over in the patch 1.07 files for whatever reason. But we can't deny that this is the best sign we've ever gotten for Elden Ring DLC. It really doesn't get any better than this aside from an official trailer. Now I can't imagine that these files were left in intentionally, but it is going to be interesting to see what the response of this is, because now that they know that we know, they can start giving out teasers and playing with the hype that's been generated off the back of this. Now I've been telling you guys for a while to be on the lookout for something like this, and I'm glad it finally happened. Personally, I was expecting the leaks to start last month, but I'm just glad we can finally have comfort in the fact that DLC is coming, and man, I'm hyped for those arenas. Now I don't want to go as far as to predict what the setting might be or the story of the DLC is going to be based off these leaks, because we really don't have any information or anything to suggest a possibility at all. I don't think the coliseums are going to directly tie into the story of the DLC, because they're already hinted at in the present setting, but if we do go back in time, then perhaps we could see them restored to their original glory. But let me know what you guys think down below. Either way though, that's going to pretty much do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed. If you guys are as hyped for this DLC as I am, definitely leave a like on the video, and subscribe if you're new around here, because you guys know I keep you up to date on all things Elden Ring. And with all that, I'll catch you in the next one.